I would say that what inspired me to start Vitract is very, very personal to me. And you'll see that in in sort of these background stories of how these big companies get built. Usually the founders have a deep personal connection to the problem that they're trying to solve. And so I think that, that is a great place to start, is to think about what are things that motivate you, what are things that excite you, whether it be topics, whether it be problems, whether it be things that you run across in your daily life. That's a great starting point because that's something that you're going to resonate with. Naturally, when you're building something, there are good times and there are tough times, right? And the people that survive the tough times have sort of this higher reasoning for why they're doing what they're doing. They connect with it on a deeper level than just the business itself. And so I would say my advice to anybody wanting to start a company like Vitract, or really, wanting to understand my inspiration behind starting this company, is to really look at what are the problems that drive you. So for when I was starting Vitract, I had a lot of trouble looking for these specialized gut microbiome testing that was accessible, that I could afford. And there isn't really much out there. So I really care about this problem. I actually, from the time that I experienced the problem to the time when I started the company, a lot of time passed, and I eventually came back to that problem and decided to solve it. Um, so yeah, I would say my why for building Vitract is I sort of felt the pain of the customer myself. So I think before I dive into the challenges, I'm going to talk about what most people's challenges are and how I actually, was able to surpass those pretty quickly. I think what really stumps most people is taking that first step and taking that first leap and actually starting the momentum of building something. Once you're in the momentum, and this sort of goes with anything, it goes with building a habit, learning a new skill, starting a company. Once you're in the momentum, it becomes a little bit easier to keep going. But just know that there are going to be challenges all throughout the journey, just like there are good times and success. And so those things kind of coexist all the time, whether it's at the start, whether it's at an exit, whether it's, your first couple of customers, whatever. And so the challenges that we had early on were very different than the challenges that we have now. Early on, the challenges were more around how are we going to actually build this technology, right? We're a technology first company, we're a research first company. So what we're building is really hard to build. And so those challenges were around how do I put the right team together? How do I get capital to sort of fund this thing and get it going? The challenges today are a little bit different. So we have a lot of customers using the product, and the challenges are more around how do we make this a seamless experience for those customers? So, and I'm sure the challenges a year from now, 5 years from now, are going to be different. But I think there's sort of a seasonality to those things. But I think the hardest thing for most people that I've seen is sort of taking that first step and um, just starting to, really overthink the process rather than taking steps towards it. Yeah, I think in that case, so one of the main challenges I had when I was building my tract was I didn't really have a network in the scientific community. I didn't really have a network in the investor community. So I was very much an outsider to the tech world. Um, the advantage I had was, New York is a quick flight away, right? So I could just go and I could put myself out there. So whether that's feasible for you or not, that's sort of dependent on everyone's situation, but it still wasn't easy because I didn't have those networks, right? That I needed to build this thing to life. And so I actually I sat down and I sort of mapped out who are all the different people that I know that could connect me with someone, that could connect me with someone else. And so that early kickstarting motion was really, it's really funny when I get into the stories and, I'm talking about it with my friends, like the sort of all these backdoor ways of getting connected to people. I also did something, I joined an online accelerator called On Deck. And the On Deck community was my way of meeting a bunch of other founders. And then through some of those other founders, I met some early investors. And then through those early investors, I ended up meeting what became our early investors. So it was, it was a lot of just stumbling in the right direction. It's hard to build a roadmap for doing this successfully without really just doing it. You really just have to go out there and start talking to people and see who can connect you to what resource that you need. So that's a really interesting question because leveraging technology for impact, you have to start thinking about where to start, right? Are you starting in the technology space itself, or is your goal to be a domain expert in, LLMs, or are you more focused on what the impact itself is? These are two different problems. And so first, the place I would start is really honing down on what you're trying to do. When you answer that question, you will know what the problem is, what the solution is, and what the impact is. Once you're really, really, really clear on that big overarching sort of North Star vision, then you can say technology is just a way to speed up those things, right? So then you can say, where can I pull in artificial intelligence and different tools that we have available now to get there faster, to make those jobs, possible and reachable in a couple of years versus decades, right? So I think the way to look at these new technologies is look at them as enablers, not as the endpoint solution, but as the enabler to get you to sort of where you want to go. So that's going to happen. That happens all the time. It happens to me, very regularly. One of the biggest pain points as a founder is fundraising, building that runway for the company. And that is really, really hard. You get hundreds of no's before you get a yes. And so it's not an easy journey. And the way I deal with it is I have a strong belief that environment is everything. And so for your environment, at least for me, can have a very large impact on my mindset. So if I'm stuck in my room and I have all the time to think about a rejection, then I'm going to do that. But the way I get out of it is I say, okay, how can I go leave the house or work in an office space with other founders? How can I work with a friend one day, maybe one day I pull in certain team members and we are working together. So how can I find different ways to stimulate myself? Because I think if you give yourself that space to ruminate on a problem, you will. Ultimately, it's about how can you set up these different systems to trick yourself into sort of getting to the next step, and really not creating that space to sit in that rejection too long because it doesn't serve you. Right now, we sell tests all over the US and Canada, but we've been seeing a lot of interest from practitioners in Switzerland, in different parts of Europe, in the UK. And so we want to start to build out infrastructure to be able to serve other pockets of communities. We want to, we're still an early stage startup, so there's a lot of refining to do around our sales process, the way we serve our customers. So I would say the main thing is today, if I had known 6 months ago where we are today, I would have been so excited, right? But where I still feel today like I did 6 months ago, where I kind of look ahead and I see so much work to be done. And I think that is something to remember, right? Is there's always going to be like that next milestone that you're so excited about. But Chidozi and I, we always remind ourselves that we have to have fun every single day. This is not about the day we sell this company or the day, that we feel like we've finally accomplished that big vision. That's not really what this is about. This is about enjoying the process throughout it, right? Because like I said, there are new challenges every day. There are different challenges in different stages of building a company. So I think just finding moments of joy along the way. So some of those moments for me have been working with this team that we have, right? Like we love people on our team. We have so much fun. Other moments of joy are when we talk to a customer and they talk about how much they love the product, how much it's changed the way they work. You know, those things feel really good, and you should allow yourself to like sit in those small moments and feel good about them, and then sort of use that energy to sort of fuel yourself for the next time that there's, you know, a big obstacle, which there always is, right? So yeah. So I want to answer that question with a story. So Vitract is not the first thing that I've built or worked on. Before Vitract, when all the way back when I was in high school, I actually built an NGO. We were connecting schools with causes, and we were trying to bring together capital in a way where lots of different schools, all of their money can be pulled together to donate to a cause rather than one school at a time, so we can really magnify the impact. I was, you know, 16, 17 at the time, right? And we had scaled this to over 30 schools, and there were so many people working on this thing. None of us were making a dollar. It wasn't about the money. It was just about building something and seeing what that feels like. And I think that experience really, really changed my life, because I remember the first time we had a meeting. It was a meeting on a weekend, and we didn't have a venue, right? We didn't have any money. So we went to the high school. And you know, I didn't know that high schools close on the weekends. So we got there and they were closed. And I went up to the janitor and I said, "Oh, like, don't worry, this has been approved. Like we need to get into this room so we can have a meeting." So he let us into this classroom. We had a meeting, and it was just like it was so funny thinking back that we didn't really have any of this figured out, but I remember having so much fun at that meeting, because I was sitting in a room with 30 different leaders. These were school presidents of each of the high schools. And we were sitting there, we were coming up with the calendar for the rest of the year. You know, we went outside, we played games, and that was the first time that I was like, all right, it feels so good to bring a team together, to put something into motion. Now, after that, I did many other things. I worked in investment banking. I was a trader. I had, like, you know, jobs in finance. I did all these things, but I remember feeling like nothing quite felt like that one time that I had started something myself. And so years later, like decade later, I came back and started to build things. Actually started building a different startup before Vitract, made a bunch of mistakes, you know, learned a bunch, and then started Vitract. And so I think to most people, I would say the first thing you ever do isn't going to be like your big thing, right? Um, you're going to do lots of things in your life. You're going to make lots of mistakes, but you're going to learn from them. And each of those things will sort of help you become a more refined leader. And so my advice really goes back to what I said at the start of this call, which was just do it, right? Just take that first step. Take away that big meaning from that first step so that it doesn't feel scary, and then just go out and put things into motion, and it will only get you in good places.